Greetings and salutations, everybody. Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Austin, Texas on the 11th day of December. Tomorrow being 12/12 should be an interesting day. It's already been an interesting morning. There's been a reported pipe bomb at the Port Authority in New York City, and apparently somebody's been arrested. I don't know if an explosion went off. I'm unclear right now as to what the extent of that event is or was at that particular time, but it's always great to start the week off with a little explosive activity in the Big Apple, rattle some cages and get some people emoting at a pretty low frequency, so all those psychic vampires floating all around can just suck it all up. What's happening out there? It's a sunny day here in Austin, Texas. I unfortunately was not able to do the live stream last night because I was just pretty out of it. I was pretty tired. It's been a very active weekend in terms of media. I did 2 shows with Rock Castaldo, one on Friday and one on Saturday. He's a great guy. If you haven't found him or discovered his work, you may want to check it out. Rock Castaldo, Drive-By Shaman. Just look him up. He's a Facebook friend. That's RACASTALDO, Rock Castaldo. Comes from a long line of Etruscan shamans. It's interesting. And we had really good chats both on Friday and Saturday night. And I'll have him on my show as a guest in the not too distant future. So that was going on. And then I did an epic 4-hour webinar on Saturday in Capricorn. It was a really great experience. And that was through astrolata.com, and just tons of information and lots of really eager and curious people wanting to understand the cycles that we're in astrologically, both on the collective front and on the personal front. And if you missed it, you can still get the webinar. If you missed it live, you can still get the webinar from astrolata.com and check it out. That's available. So I might even do like a special deal for people that download that webinar. I have to think about it. I have to think about what the deal will be. I'll figure it out, and I'll give a shout out tomorrow. So if you download the webinar, we'll figure something out. Kind of incentivize you. It's 4 hours worth of work, man. I don't know if you've ever talked for 4 hours straight. Talking for 4 hours straight. I think Rand Paul did it. Didn't he talk for like a day and a half or something? And what was her name? Davis, who was here in Texas, who had her filibuster moment. But it's not that easy, especially when you're trying to connect dots at a pretty high level and keep everybody organized and kind of on track and on point. Anyway, I was pretty toasty by last night, so I just decided to get some rest and come back and hit it hard today, and here we are. And there's always a lot going on. Why don't we catch up with the LA fires, since we're trying to track that. And this is from Fox News.
And Jillian, the good news is fire crews are making progress here.
Okay, good. Fire crews are making progress. That's good. We need to hear that because, where do we start with this thing? Well, why don't we do this? Let's just get you caught up here. This is Southern California's largest and most destructive wildfire exploded in size Sunday into new areas as the wind whipped flames forced thousands of more residents to flee their homes. The powerful flare-up on the western edge of the Thomas Fire sparked new evacuations as the fire sent up an enormous plume near Montecito and Carpinteria, seaside areas in the Santa Barbara County that have been under fire threat for days are now choked with smoke. If you've never been to that part of California, it's really nice. And there are a lot of really fantastic vineyards. The movie Sideways was filmed in and around that area. So it's really, it's hard to watch. I mean, I lived in California for a very long time and very familiar with those areas and spent some nice times in those areas. So the winds are kind of squirrely right now, Mike Elias and the Santa Barbara County Fire spokesman said. In some places, the smoke is going straight up in the air, and others it is blowing sideways. Hey, speaking of sideways, depends on what canyon we're in. Fire crews, with the help from fleet water, dropping planes, and helicopters, tried to save homes as unpredictable gusts sent the blaze deeper into residential foothill areas. Northwest of Los Angeles, the wind fan flames churned through old growth brush and canyons and along hillsides toward coastal towns. The out-of-control blaze grew by more than 50,000 acres on Sunday and scored 230,000 acres in total, making it the fifth largest wildfire in modern California history, according to the Los Angeles Times. Now, the Thomas Fire joins the list of destructive blazes in the state. The blaze split into two forks in an uncontrolled move west into the Santa Barbara foothills and northwest towards Lake Cachuma. Thousands of homes and businesses across Santa Barbara County were without power. Overall, the fires have destroyed about 800 homes and other buildings, killed dozens of horses, and forced more than 200,000 people to flee since December 4th. We're 7 days into this thing. We're 7 days into a fire, and it's still going, and it's still metastasizing. Although they do say that they... what's going on here? Come on now. They do say that that they do have some of this under control, or they're getting there. Officials handed out masks to residents who stayed behind in Montecito, the wealthy hillside enclave that's home to celebrities such as Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bridges, and Rob Lowe. And guess who else has a home there? Ellen DeGeneres. This is what she said. Our house is under threat of being burned. Ellen DeGeneres tweeted at midday Sunday, we just had to evacuate our pets. I'm praying for everyone in our community and thankful to all the incredible firefighters. Our house is under threat of being burned. We just had to evacuate our pets. Here's Oprah. Peace be still is my prayer tonight. Oprah tweeted Sunday. For all the fires raging through my community and beyond. Hashtag peace be still. Peace be still. Well, I mean, I get it, but this just seems so trite and cliche. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's just, it's draining the power of prayer. I mean, it just seems so artificial and cheap in some ways. I get it, but it's just. In Carpinteria, retired school teacher May Osher told the LA Times she didn't plan to leave her neighborhood unless ordered by police. I'm staying until it's time to go. A few miles west, to the west, Santa Barbara Zoo was closed to the public. Workers there gave shelter to the zoo's 500 animals. Poor animals. Animals don't deserve this. Firefighters made significant progress Saturday on other fronts of the enormous fire that started December 4th in neighboring Ventura County. As containment increased on the other blazes in Los Angeles, Riverside, and Santa Barbara County's resources from those fires were diverted to the Santa Barbara foothills. Okay, so it sounds like they're making some progress. Look, you never want to wish ill on anybody. That's just like the most egregious karma that you can stir up. Right? You wish ill will on somebody, and it's going to come back to you. It's just the energetic law of the universe. This is how these things happen. So I'm not wishing ill on Oprah or Ellen DeGeneres, but I do think it's interesting and kind of fitting that these fires are getting really close to their living structures, close to engulfing them. You know, if you're Ellen or you're Oprah, aren't you taking by the way, they're both Aquarians. But if you're Ellen and you're Oprah, aren't you maybe thinking that there may be some higher order going on here? That you may have to kind of maybe, I don't know, check in, see why this is happening, because they're both incredibly dubious and specious in a lot of ways, and especially degenerous after that just travesty of that Jesus Ramos interview that she did. What is it now? About 3-4 weeks ago. I mean, come on. I don't know. Maybe it's a reality check for them. We'll see. Or maybe it's just, hey, I've got a lot of money, a lot of insurance, and I'm well employed, and I can just go rebuild anywhere. I'm impervious to anything that happens to me, even though I'm guided by the hand of Satan. Yeah, so these fires are disturbing on a lot of different levels, and people are always sending me interesting material. And I was sent a video, which I watched some of, but the general gist of this video, this was sent to me by Lynn down in Panama, is that there is a war going on in California, and the secret dirt about California is that the Chinese own California, and that they essentially have been buying up just about everything they can, and also because of the defaulting on the loan that we got from China, there were backdoor deals that were made, and apparently one of the deals is that the Chinese own California, and apparently they own Hawaii as well. Now, you can go down the rabbit hole and you can drill down there and see what you can find, but this does not sound all that out of the ordinary in some ways. So if this is the case, then are these fires, which, I mean, we can look at what happened in Northern California, and I think that there's a pretty strong case for directed energy weapons. I mean, if you really get down into it, you drill down into it, you look at the evidence, and you look at what people were talking about or saw, just before the fire, the flashes of light in the sky, the same thing was happening in Southern California. So we have these directed energy weapons that are creating these massive firestorms. And there's real problems in Northern California. I mean, people who were living there are displaced. They're living in their cars. They haven't been able to resolve anything with their insurance. Their jobs, most of their jobs have gone away. I mean, these are people that, a lot of them are service-oriented jobs. Maybe they work at a store, maybe they own a gas station, or work at a gas station, or maybe they're a veterinarian or something, or maybe they're a vet assistant, or maybe they're a dental assistant. There's no place that they're not going back to work. There's no place to go to work. And so you have these legions of homeless people now in Northern California. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. It's a really sad story. And now you're going to have the same thing in Southern California. So something's going on here in a pretty significant way. And there's a lot of you out there who are really, really, really good cyber sleuths. So maybe you can start going down these rabbit holes and making some connections with some of the things I'm talking about, and send them to me, and let's do our own version of crowdsource funding. What is it? Crowdsource the truth? Is that what it is? I was sent a very interesting document. I actually wasn't sent the document. I was linked to somebody on Facebook who sent me this document. It's a post. And I'm going to try to get it on the screen here. Let me just do this. Just going to let's try this. See what we got. Okay. I'm going to go to, let's get into Facebook so I can find this. It's really worth hanging in there and waiting for it, because it's pretty revelatory, and it gets into some of the stuff that I've been thinking about, and kicking around. So let me just see if I can find this thing. Getting there. Getting there real fast. Let me see what we got. Yeah, here it is. So somebody left this for me on Facebook, and I was tagged with a number of interesting folks: Jay Widener, Jay Parker. Some of the I actually felt like, wow, man, look who I'm in here with. Let me see if I can find this again. It's a pretty. I just had it up here on the. There it is. Okay, so this is from the 6th of December. So we're talking 5 days ago. This is an anonymous source. I can verify it. Okay, I cannot verify it. So I'm not saying that this is exactly what's happened. I'm passing it along. It's up for you to decide. Disclaimer. You're going to know some of the players I'm about to talk about here. One of which is Jason Goodman, whom I've never really... I never really thought that Jason Goodman was up to any good. Let's put it that way. You know, I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing the psychic work for a while. I've been doing the rabbit hole work for a while, and a lot of times they converge. And when something smells like 3-day-old fish, it probably is. Okay? All right. So just keep that in mind. And then also, Laura Loomer just appeared out of nowhere. I think she cut her chops with Veritas, and but again, where did she come from? And how do these people make money? Right? How do they do what they do? How do they travel from this place to that place? And well, you're going to find out. So this, again, I'm passing this along. You have to take it, digest it, figure it out whether or not it is in parentheses true. So here we go. Jason Goodman is on the payroll of a man named Arnon Milchan. Now, Milchan, we know for a fact, is an arms dealer. He's written a book about it. He's a movie producer. He's produced lots of really famous movies. I think Pretty Woman's one of them. You just look him up. And he's an arms dealer for the Israelis. I mean, he's admitted it. I'm not saying anything spurious or scandalous. It's out there. It's on the public record. So it says here, Arnon has Jason doing work partly out of blackmail. Okay, again, you're going to have to, this is a disclaimer. I'm not saying this is true. I'm passing this along. Jason was at parties with a producer named Brian Singer, and there were underage boys and girls. Jason was being paid $2,788 a week, and it's now up to $3,500 a week. Laura Loomer is making $7,000 a week from Milchan. Black Cube feed them info. Black Cube is the intelligence agency. It's a private version of the Mossad. Jason found out that Milchan is paying Loomer twice as much as him, and that's why they had this fight. Apparently they had a fight. Please do not tell anyone how you got this info. It's on Facebook. That's how I got the info. Okay, you can go to Facebook. Goodman's job is to deflect attention from Rahm Emanuel, Chuck Schumer, and DWS. Rahm secretly paid Pakistani prosecutors $3 million in hush money in March 2009 to make a ton of fraud charges go away. The money came from Israel. The Awans have been spying for Israel since 2007-2008, with Schumer as the kingpin. Now, Milchan works with a guy named Avi Hirsch. I know you and T and others know some of this stuff. But now you know the full story. Also, Alan Dershowitz has over 7 hours of Orgy Island vid hidden in his vid file. It's called Insurance, the same name as Schumer's boy, Anthony Weiner. Avi is deeply involved in pedophilia in Hollywood, and the purpose of these parties was to bring in kids for fun and games. You want to explore the video below at 7:53. There is Jason Goodman's 13th birthday party. with Avi procuring a 13-year-old China girl. I couldn't open that link. So this is a pretty bold assertion and accusation and a lot of deep intel. And again, I'm not saying that this is true. I'm passing it along. It's up for you to decide and figure out. But it does seem to resonate on the Jason Goodman tip, because I've never felt Jason Goodman's work was on the up and up. I just don't. And even with the Seth Rich stuff, and even with the Awans and with George, I don't know. It never felt right. It felt like there was a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I felt like there was a lot of misdirection going on. A lot of misdirection. And it was interesting, theater in some ways, because every day there'd be something new and something new and something new and something new and something new. And you felt like you were on, sort of this little quest down the rabbit hole with these guys. And, where is it now? Anyway, I just thought I'd pass that along, because in some ways it makes sense. And we do know about Milchan's past. He's been very, very public with it. So I wonder if Alex Jones would cover this. Somehow I don't think so. It's been a pretty intense time since Trump said that the embassy is going to get moved to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. Palestinians haven't been too happy about it. The Saudis are feigning some kind of, indignation and rage, but they're not going to stand up to Israel and the United States, because they're both allies. And for all intents and purposes, even the Saudis have all these assets and everything. If you know anything about how they get their oil money, which they get through Standard Oil and a bank in New York City, what they get is credits. They don't get paid out in cash. They get paid out in bank credits, and this has been going on for years. So even their relationship with their money is tenuous at best, and they're dependent upon the banking system to continue to support whatever they're doing. And apparently they're having a real hard time with oil that they've overproduced, and they're pumping water now. And they've got to wait for that oil cycle to catch back up again, which is why they're trying to move into diversifying their economy and their culture and becoming less extremist to some extent. I mean, now they're saying that they're going to open up movie theaters in Saudi Arabia. Well, that would be interesting. Before we get on to the evangelical piece, because I do want to talk about that, and it's an interesting kind of fact, and how there's a break in a schism with millennials, with older generations, and it's not just in certain areas. And you can see that even on the evangelical tip, there's a break. I'm going to read this to you because I want to talk about the NFL, but we're kind of in a flow with this. So let's stay with this. So this is from the Christian Post, and it says evangelical support for Israel declining, especially among millennials. You see, millennials want to determine the nature of their reality, the nature of their connection with culture, religion, everything. Remember, they're Pluto and Scorpio. They're a fixed generation. They don't deviate. They're not going to just step in and say, well, this is what was done before, so we're going to do it this way again. That's not how they're wired. That's not how. Have you ever really hung out with a Scorpio person and seen them in action? When they make up their minds about something, or they go down a particular path, there's no turning back, and they're going to go to the depths or to the extremes in order to understand what it is that they need to experience. That's how they work. So it's not just, hey, we're not going to put up with Donald Trump anymore, or hey, we're not going to put up with whatever anymore. It even extends into religion. So I'm going to read this to you so you get a better understanding. It says support for Israel is decreasing among evangelical Christians, particularly among younger generations. A new survey shows a decline born out of confusion about or indifference to the world's only Jewish state. 77% of evangelicals ages 65 and older say they support the existence, security, and prosperity of Israel, according to a Lifeway Research survey released on Monday. Only 58% of evangelicals ages 18 to 34, there's your millennial group, say the same. So that's a pretty big gap. We've got 77 to 58, that's 20% less. The survey was conducted using a web-based utility, a probability-based panel designed to be representative of the American population, measuring attitudes of 2002, it's an interesting number, 22, evangelicals pertaining to Israel from September 20th to 28th. For the most part, the younger evangelicals are indifferent about Israel, said Scott McConnell, executive director of Lifeway Research. Some say such indifference is the result of how young people view recent geopolitical events and conflicts in the region. Darrell L. Bach, a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, whom CP interviewed last year about a chapter he contributed to the New Christian Zionism, Fresh Perspectives about Israel and the Land, thinks Israel is not much of a priority for younger evangelicals. Bach, also a board member for Chosen People Ministry, sponsored the Lifeway survey. The terror attacks on 9/11 changed the Middle East equation, and young people just aren't sure where Israel's supposed to fit, Bach told Lifeway. He added that when young evangelicals consider the Middle East, they're more likely to think about Iraq or Iran or the impact of terrorism around the world, because these are the kids that were growing up during 9/11. Correct? I mean, let's say you were 15 years old in 9/11, which is 17 years ago. You're 32 and you're on the outer bands of the millennials. And that's an age group that could theoretically process some information. But what if you're 9, 10, 11 years old in 9/11 in 2001, my bad. So what if you're 9, 10, 11 in 2001? That's got to be a pretty hairy event. I mean, I've written about this before. But this is a generation that's deeply impacted, perhaps even scarred by 9/11 in ways that we can't even understand. Because we weren't that young when a really significant event happened. And this is, again, what separates the millennials apart from other generations. It's that scorpionic intensity, right? That there's a reality before 9/11 and there's a reality after 9/11. And you cannot parse it any other way. We were living in a post 9/11 world. And everything is different, from how we travel to how we view other cultures to how we deal with other countries abroad based on the Patriot Act and being able to strike preemptively if we feel like we need to in order to protect our own interests, which is what happened with the Patriot Act. We basically given carte blanche. If we think somebody's a threat, we'll just go after them. Where have you heard that before? What country practices that kind of preemptive strategy? Think about it. So everything's different. Everything's different since 9/11. And even this kind of false patriotic kind of jingoism and symbolism and all the stuff. You know, patriotism got recast after 9/11. It's much closer to Zionism or neoconservatism than at any other time. You know, even now when we look at this whole concept around the Israel piece, and I see this now in Alex Jones. I can't even watch Alex Jones. I used to like David Knight. It's like I could watch about 10 minutes of him and I turn him off. Because what they don't understand, you see, they're making the analogy now that because I mean, let's face it, the Palestinians were there for a really long period of time. And then you get the Balfour Declaration, and it's like, okay, there you go. You can have Israel. You know, this is Western Europe thinking that they could get rid of the quote unquote Jewish problem, right? That's what they're thinking. We'll give them Israel. Let's get them out of here. They helped us make all of our fortunes. The Rothschilds were great. They were crafty. They gave us, huge amounts of money. But we're kind of done with them. So let's give them Israel and let's get them out of here. That's what was going on. And guess what? That was not the case. It was never the case. So we have this right of return, the repatriation, theoretically, and all hell breaks loose in the Middle East. And you've got this group of people that have been there for a very long time. And by the way, you're going to hear things like, "Oh, this is a terrible problem. It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years." Not really. Not really. Before these uber aggressive groups of people started showing up from Western Europe, basically you had a group of people that were mostly getting along there. And they were like, "Okay, you trade this, I trade that. I've got olives, you've got dates. Let's have an economy." That was really kind of what was going on. It wasn't terrible. And if it was ever terrible, it was because the English were sticking their noses in there all the time, trying to gain some kind of foothold in places like Turkey or Saudi Arabia or Iraq, because of course there was oil there, and they knew that. And they knew that oil was going to be a really important part of the expansion and the rebuilding of Western Europe. Anyway. And then in 1948, the game changes. 1948, all of a sudden, there's a new country there. And there's this kind of, how do we say this, uncomfortable sort of truce. And then we have the 6-Day War. And I remember that when I was a kid. And I remember my mother, "Oh my God, there's a war. There's a war going on in Israel." I'm like, what's that mean? Everybody was kind of up in arms. There was a lot of drama around it. And they redrew the borders. They got a lot of land. It's a big land grab. And now you've got basically an apartheid state over there. It's clear it's an apartheid state. And so these guys like Alex Jones and David Knight they're using this thing like, if you're living there and all of a sudden somebody says, "Guess what? We're coming over here and we're gonna build our embassy. This is gonna be the new capital. This is gonna be the new capital of Israel, and that means we got a one-state solution. And you were not a part of the process. You're just, this is how we're solving it. Easy, done. Eminent domain, right? Eminent rock of the domain. So, if you're those people and you've been putting up with this for, since 1948 roughly, all of a sudden you're just sick of this. You're absolutely sick of it. And so you put up a little resistance. Who wouldn't? If you were in occupied territory, and it's basically an occupied territory, who wouldn't put up resistance? This is what normal people theoretically would do. So there you go. Now these guys like David Knight and Alex Jones are like, see, look how they're acting. Do you want this in this country? Do you want this in this country? We've got to close our borders. We've got to keep the Muslims out. It's like, they've got a nice boogeyman, don't they? And this whole Islamophobia has been all about creating a nice boogeyman. Now, that's not to say that there aren't issues. There are issues. But they're not the issues that these guys are talking about and promoting and marketing. They're marketing fear now. So it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna get right in there. So you're either with us or against us. This is the psychological model, and this is the mind trap. This is what we're talking about. You're either with us or you're against us. With us or against us. Because if you sit back and say, okay, well, I'm not really down with this. I don't think that the embassy should be moved. It's going to cause a lot of trouble, stir up conflict. It's like throwing a grenade in the middle of a room. The Palestinians have no say. Just from a human rights perspective, it's looking like it's prophecy. Prophecy, leads to war and Armageddon and all this other stuff. Okay? You can have that point of view, which, by the way, I do. And I don't think it, I don't think it has to happen. I don't think it has to happen. But if I take that point of view, then based on sort of the vox populi, or at least the message being driven by the so-called not fake media, the so-called not fake news, their point of view is, well, if you don't, hold on a second. If you don't support this, then guess what? Well, you're supporting terrorism. You're supporting terrorism. And this is not the case. So you've either got to chime in and say, well, I support this because it's the right thing to do, and it is the Christian thing to do, it's the American thing to do. These people are great allies in a very tense and charged area of the world. And if you don't, you're basically siding with the terrorists. It's another one of those you're either with us or against us kind of maxims. So it's really a false dichotomy in a lot of ways. It's forced, and you can choose. And you can choose differently, but in order to do that, you have to redefine it. And nobody has time to hear the redefinition. That's where we are in our culture. We don't have time for any kind of subtlety. We don't have time for any kind of deviation that is outside of these really bifurcated dual models. I've been following Robert Reich on Twitter a lot. And I've been trolling Robert Reich. It's actually kind of fun. Anyway, it's classic. It's a classic example of this is how we do it. This is the progressive way. This is the democratic way. No, there's a third way. There's a third way. Nobody talks about the third way. I mean, there are certain things inside of the democratic progressive model that are actually not a bad thing. Like, I think there should be safety nets for people, and I think there should be government oversight for entities that are out of control, and not use those government agencies to advance an agenda, right? Like the Bureau of Land Management, or what else? Let's just look at the Bureau of Land Management. So let's say, for instance, there's a plot of land that the government really, really wants and desires, and they can use anything they want at their disposal. Look at the Bundys in Nevada. It's a really great example. It's government overreach. That's not looking after our best interests, you see? But I think some of those things should exist, because apparently we're still a government last time I checked. So I think those are essential, and safety nets are essential. There's way too many homeless people out there. Way too many. And there's got to be some structure and some systems involved to help them in a much bigger way. So I think those are two things that are really important. The safety net, and if there are entities that are out of control, they need to be put back in place. Whether economic, banking entities, corporate, environmental, the EPA is another one. The EPA's gone in and used its power to actually, again, reallocate land, and there's there's plenty of cases about this. So the things that have been created to essentially be the watchdogs, or to look out after our interests, have been metastasized and weaponized and kind of gotten out of control. So these are basic, standard kind of democratic progressive values. Look out for the people of this country and figure out a safety net. Infrastructure, another keystone, is not a bad thing, because our infrastructure is in pretty bad shape. And take those three elements and then build them into a model of lesser government. But the other thing too here is that, this is one of the things that I think Obama actually got right, although he was roundly criticized for it, which is that, he was really big into volunteering, right? At least early on, there was a big push to volunteer. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think if we reconfigure that if we reconfigure that and maybe add in the governance piece, so volunteer governance, that could be a really critical kind of aspect. That we all serve some form or some role inside of our either city or county elected governments for a period of time. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's something really mundane, or maybe it's something not mundane. I think maybe more involvement in that on our side could be quite helpful. But who knows? Maybe it's too late, and the giant AI god will descend down upon us, and we'll all wind up worshiping it because it's just so damn cool. And we'll have all our VR glasses on. They'll be worshiping the AI god. So let's just get back to this. This is Daryl Brock. This is the guy from the Dallas Theological Seminary. He added that when young evangelicals consider the Middle East, they're more likely to think about Iraq or Iran, which we talked about. The survey also found that approximately 76% of respondents said Christians should support the right of Jewish people to live in the sovereign state of Israel. 20% said they were not sure, and 5% disagreed. 69% said the Jews possess a historic right to the land of Israel. There's only 19% say Palestinians have such a claim. 41% of respondents said Jewish people have a biblical right to Israel but must share it. The Christians with evangelical beliefs were at least likely to agree that Jews have a distinct biblical claim to the land of Israel are African Americans. They're also the least likely group measured to view Israel positively. So let me read that again. The Christians with evangelical beliefs who are least likely to agree that Jews have a distinctly biblical claim to the land of Israel are African Americans. They are also the least likely group measured to view Israel positively. That's interesting. That's an interesting statistic. I mean, if you follow closely what happens in Israel, I mean, they kick out the Ethiopian faction of the Jewish faith. They kick them out. They don't like them. They don't like them. They don't want them there. And if you're an African American and you're witnessing that, how does that play out? Because people are informed. We're living in the age of the internet. People are totally informed, or at least they're getting informed. All right, I think that's about it for today. We've covered a lot, didn't we? I think so. So, business-wise, I still have some holiday specials for readings on my website. I'm going to keep those up for a while, and some people are taking advantage of them. I think the best special is three half-hour readings for basically, it is $140. It's a good deal. It's a really good deal. So if you want to give a half an hour reading to a friend, it's like about a $45 gift. And I have versions of that. I've got the three reading special. I've got the 2 reading special. I've got a half hour reading special, and I've even got a discounted 1 hour reading special. So if you want to do that for people, get that for them for gifts. That's over on my website. I'll be back 24 hours from today. You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm Robert Phoenix. Always thank you very much for chiming in. And if you want to find out more about Saturn and Capricorn and the webinar, go to astrolata.com, and you got 4 hours worth of hardcore, intense, packed information from the macro to the micro. All right. Use your head to discern what's real.